So thank you very much for your talk, Claire. Are there any questions?
Can you tell us more about the romance of the casa?
Can I say any more about the bib, the casa? See, mine is hard to see, this thing here. Actually, no. I don't know the iconography of this. I do know that it represents the mendicant robes that the Buddha wore. I do not know the symbolism. I didn't even know about the four directions in the center. Four directions in center. That makes five directions. Yeah. We also speak of the 10 directions. The 10 directions are north, northeast, east, southwest, south, anyway. Yes, north, northeast, northwest, south, southeast, southwest, east, west. Yes, okay, there we go. That's 8, and then we have up and down. Those are the 10 directions. Okay, so we have both of those things. And what that means is the whole universe. It means the whole universe. So this is just a symbol that just reminds us of our promise. You know, when you take 5 precepts, in our system, that's the first step. When you take 5 precepts, that's a commitment to practice. And then after that, there's 10 precepts, which is a commitment to helping other people practice. And then it sort of goes on from there. But it's all this enlarged vision. At every step, there's this enlarged vision of what our role is, what our job is. You know, as Claire said, the actual question to Zen Master Sung San was not what is Zen, it was what is the fast road to Zen? And this was Sihoi Liao, who was at the time a newish sort of student to Zen, and he was a very forceful person. He later became a monk, and then he became a Zen Master Subang, and then he died suddenly of a heart attack at the age of 54 while giving a Kongan interview to a 12-year-old girl in Hong Kong. But just whoop. And he was an amazing guy. He was actually the first guiding teacher of our little center 100 or so years ago. But so Sihoi Liao wrote a postcard to Zen Master Sung San that said, what is the fast road to Zen? It's kind of an arrogant thing to say. And then Zen Master Sung San, the story I heard is he sent the postcard back, probably in an envelope, and not for me. And I always have to say this, not for me, doesn't mean like cilantro is not for me. I'm one of these people who, when I eat cilantro, it tastes like soap, so it's not for me. It's not that not for me. It's not like, oh, I'm not going to practice Zen, it's not for me. It's the big not for me. It's like not about me. So we don't practice in order to be better at something. We don't practice in order to be happy. We don't even practice in order to be calm, not even in order to be centered. We practice in order to help this world. And the other things that happen, the calmness, the centeredness, you know, our heart rate does get better, really happens. You know, our blood pressure usually does improve, although of course, you know, Subangsanim died of a heart attack with clogged arteries, so that doesn't mean we never die, never get sick. But yeah, these sort of side effects happen. But that's not the point. The point is not these things. The point is to wake up and help this world. That's what practice is about. And this little bib is a reminder that we took a promise that we would do that. So that's that.
How about the gold badge?
Oh, the gold badge is just, it's just a little button. It's not a badge, it's a button. It's just sort of the logo of the Quantum School of Zen. So everyone knows, oh, that's Quantum School of Zen, you know, if they care, if they even notice. But yeah, it's just saying what group we're affiliated with. There are many, 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 many forms of Buddhism. There are many, many, many forms of Zen. There are many forms of Korean Zen, which is our ancestry. Many forms of American Zen. They all have the same direction. They all have the same point. And this is not theoretical. Stan and I are very good friends with teachers in other schools. And it's very clear. They all have the same direction. They all have the same point. So bring that into your life. That's very important. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so on bowing, there's a lot about the form of bowing, and I think that I always, although I just realized this, like there's a hierarchy. The best form is a full prostration. I know where I came up with it. I don't know, because I know nobody told me that. But when I was thinking of that, and I was thinking, well, no, that can't be. It has to be all the same, whether you're doing a full prostration or whether, and there was even, I think it was Bobby Rhodes, but I don't know. I hate to assign anything of where she said, even if you can't bow, if and she just moved her finger, that's your bow, all right? But then, and so I thought, well, if it doesn't matter what your body does, that's not really the bow, then, but that's always what we talk about, regardless of whether it's an adapted form or the full prostration, it's what your body's doing. But what's your mind doing? I mean, do you bow with your mind or do you bow with your body? And I know that sounds like I'm separating
Question.
my
Thank
body,
you.
but it's not but I'm not really, it's just, what do you bow with? I don't know.
So I can talk about my experience. First of all, I had these really bad knees for the last couple of years, and I can no longer do full prostrations with other people. Very, very slowly, I can do a few of them at home. And my getting down and my getting up, it's totally pathetic. If you were to watch it, you'd see, oh, that poor person. It's really hard for me. I mean, I used to be able to do 108 bows in 8 minutes, 108 full prostrations in 8 minutes. I was so proud of myself. Now I do chair squats is what I do. It's the closest I can get. So your question is about the mind when you bow. My experience with bows is that it is a very physical practice. And I would disagree a little bit with Bobby that even if we can't see, wait a minute, there we go, that if there's this mirror thing, so it's hard to align, there we go. So even if you are going like that, is that really bowing? I don't know. At some point, maybe I'll be paralyzed and only this finger will move, and then I'll be able to tell you, okay? Except my vocal cords might not work, so I might not be able to tell you, My experience with bowing is that it's extremely powerful practice because it bypasses our mind. We don't have to direct our minds. We don't have to worry about what our minds are doing because our minds are basically stopped. And I don't mean stop, there's this sort of idea of this kind of state of pure something, something, something bliss. And, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the energy that we give to our thoughts that go round and round and round and round and round, which when we sit, that tends to overwhelm us often. We have these moments of clarity and then we're overwhelmed again, round and round and round and round like that. When we bow, the physicality of it tends to override that. I find it very difficult to have controlled thoughts about anything when I'm doing prostrations, even my little pathetic chair squats. Because your body is doing something. And the other thing about bows is whether you're in a chair or on the mat, when you go down, I hope you can see it, your hands are like this, your head is down. And that is the ape language for submission. We're apes. And if you're an ape in the wild and you're being threatened by some ape bully and you want to let them know that you're not a threat to them, that's what you'll do. You'll go down like this, with your butt up in the air, but I'm in a chair, so my butt up isn't in the air. That's the most vulnerable that you can be physically. So we put ourselves in a place of real vulnerability. And then we stand up. We don't stay vulnerable, we stand up. and then we're vulnerable, and then we stand up, and we're vulnerable, and we stand up. And my experience of it is that when we do this, and this is true doing in a chair also, and it can be true if you're doing standing bows also, that this experience of vulnerability and then standing up, and being vulnerable and then standing up, that something happens when you do this. It's like you get rewired, you know? It's just this sort of magical thing. You're not controlling it. There's no illusion of your being able to control it, especially since one of the parts of it is complete vulnerability. You know, that's why prostrations are part of almost every religious tradition, even if it's just a little bit. Like in Judaism, on Yom Kippur, there's one prostration that people will do during, and it's usually just the cantor, but sometimes other people in congregation. And you know, in Islam, prostrations are a big part of Islam. And you know, and in Catholicism, you know, monks and nuns will do prostrations as part of their sort of community practice. So yeah, so it's a very important part of a lot of traditions, and there's a reason for that. And I just see it as very physical. I don't worry about what my mind does. My mind is always just there. You know, it's not like, oh, my mind is focused on what I'm doing, because the minute you have that, you're not focused on what you're doing. You're focused on, oh, I'm so cool, you know. But it's just, I'm just bowing, I'm just bowing, I'm just bowing. So to me, you know, bowing is an amazing practice. I wish I could do it the way I used to do it, not necessarily in 8 minutes, but it's an amazing practice, and it's something I really recommend to people if they are able in any ways, whether it's chair squats or whether it's, you know, correct prostrations. I really recommend it to people. And yeah, when I was first starting to practice, and Barbara Rhodes, Zen Master Song Hyang, the head of our school at that time, she wasn't even a Zen master yet, but she was a teacher, and she told me, you know, if you only can do one thing, do prostrations. And that was very important to me because I had a toddler at the time. And you know, people who've had small children, and you sit, and what do they see? They see a lap. That's what they see. And so they're going to go sit in that lap. But when you're doing prostrations, they know mommy's busy, daddy's busy, you know, you're busy, they can't bother you. So you get to practice. So that was wonderful advice. And the other thing I want to say about prostrations is in traditional East Asian forms of Buddhism, if you go to a teacher, you know, you're a lay person and your life is falling apart in some way, you know, your marriage, your job, your kids, whatever, maybe everything at once, your health, and you go to a teacher and you say, what can I do, what can I do? And the traditional thing is to say, do prostrations, like 500 a day, 1,000 a day. Sounds impossible, but it is possible. And the reason is that there's this rewiring that happens. You do this and you do this over and over and over and over and over and over again, and something happens. And then your situation may not change. You know, your marriage, your kids, your jobs, your friendships, your whatever, your financial situation, whatever it is, that may still be, your health may still be terrible, but you can meet it differently. That's the thing about prostrations. And that's the thing about practice. It's not that it fixes your life. It's not even that it fixes anyone else's life, but the way you meet things changes. So, thank you for your question. I always love talking about prostrations, especially since I can't do them anymore. That's the best I can do. Are there any other questions? Okay, yes.
The expression, not for me.
The expression, not for me.
I also see the expression, not just for me, or not for me alone.
Not just for me or not for me alone.
And when I hear not for me, it feels like a little bit like, I don't deserve anything.
Oh, so not for me sounds like I don't deserve anything.
So I don't know if you could talk about
Yes.
not for me and not just for me.
Okay, so yeah, that's a really good point, Julie. So not for me, not just for me, not for me alone. So yeah, not for me doesn't mean that you don't have things that you need in order to function. That's really important. You know, if you've ever been a caretaker or you know somebody who's a caretaker, and there's this tendency for people to put off what they need in order to function because the need to function is so great. You know, how can I have lunch with my friends? How can I take a walk? How can I, go to Zen practice? How can I do anything? How can I give myself any kind of pleasure when this person needs me so much? This is a tremendous trap. It's a big mother trap, right? Big parent trap, right? Mothers more than fathers, I think. You know, your kid is so needy. How can you go and do something while they need you, But if you can't function, then you can't help anybody. So it's really important, it's the old thing of, put on your mask first, when the drop down on the plane because it's about to crash or something, put your oxygen mask first before you put on the oxygen mask of the person next to you. So yeah, we have to make sure that we have what we need to function. So not for me is not about self-abnegation. It's not about lack of worthiness. It's exactly because we are worthy that we can step forward and help someone. So not for me is saying that you're large, you contain multitudes. You're wonderful. Because if you weren't wonderful, how could you do anything? So yeah, thank you for that clarification. It's definitely not putting down the person, It's saying, be strong, wake up, be clear, and go take a walk in the woods if you need to take a walk in the woods. Right, thank you. You had a question.
When we're chanting Kwanzaa and Bosal, how many do we chant? Or like, what's the indication that we're about to switch to Jijang Bosal, we're about to go for the full stop?
So you're talking a very specific thing about how we chant here. We don't want people to do this. We do 3 rounds of Kwanzaa and Bosal and then 2.5 rounds of Jijang Bosal. And you can always tell because I raised my hand. The secrets. Yeah. Yeah, I find it very interesting that sometimes people catch on to that and sometimes people don't catch on to that. It's kind of interesting. We're so used to, everything has to be explained ahead of time. There used to be someone who practiced here and she'd been practicing for a while and she was a Dharma teacher. She'd taken 10 precepts and then gotten her long robes, whatever that means. And I remember her, when she would give people orientation, everything would be so detailed. First we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we, and it's like first we do this bow, and then we go to our cushion, then we do this. It was so detailed. Like there's no way I could have ever remembered it. And it was the idea that you have to know everything in advance. But we don't know everything in advance. We never know anything in advance. We have certain predictions that we make, and most of the time we're correct. But they're just predictions, So don't know is really important. So if we're here, and so our practice, which we started during COVID when we were only online, and then people liked it, so we kept going. And we have a list of people we're chanting for, and then we chant just simply the Kwanzaa, not the beginning and the end of a complicated chant, but just Kwanzaa and Bosal. And then we switch, that's the Bodhisattva Compassion. And then we switch to Jijang Bosal, which is the chant to the Bodhisattva transitions. And in particular, that's who you chant to when someone has died. And so we do those chants and yeah, people pick it up, Even when they're not told, they pick it up. It's very interesting. Yeah, so this don't know mind, that means it's not glued to its predictions. It's able to look around and say, ah, okay, look at that. Okay. That mind, instead of, I know what we're supposed to, like that. Just open. Just be open. Then you'll figure out, Thank you. And if someone else is leading it, it might be different. So, are there any other questions?
Well, I have another question, but I don't want to ask
What
it.
what
It's
is-
about the chanting too.
Yeah.
The chanting, and we chant for people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes what I find is it has occurred to me that I put people on because I think they need chanted for. But sometimes I'm not so sure that person thinks they need chanted for. You know what I mean? And so then it seems kind of wrong, I guess, would be inauthentic. So if you could speak to that.
Yes, I'm happy to speak to that. Yeah, so we chant for people because we're concerned about them. And different people have different attitudes towards the question you're raising. For me, I often ask the person if they want me to chant for them. And if they say no, I honor that.
What if they're dead?
Well, if they're dead, then so what if they're dead? So, I didn't ask the Sangha to chant for my mother or my father because I didn't think they'd appreciate it. They didn't have any connection to Zen practice. My mother fairly actively disapproved of it. So I didn't ask the congregation, I didn't ask the Sangha to do that. So you have to figure out when you're chanting for people, if it's appropriate. You know them. And so you have to decide whether it's appropriate. And nobody ever knows for sure. But you should always be respectful. If you know that they would not approve, then do not do it. That's really important. Also, sometimes people sort of would like you to chant for them, but they don't want their names. So, at times I've silently, without saying someone's name, I'm chanting for somebody, but they don't want their names out there. So, yeah. And then there's a question of what are you doing when you chant? So, one of the people we're chanting for right now is someone who is, she's dying of cancer. And in fact, it's surprising that she's still alive. And she's still conscious. Nobody's chanting for a cure because there's not going to be a cure. But what are we chanting for? You're chanting not for a particular outcome, but we're chanting, when we chant Kwansen Boso, we're chanting two ways. The first is to wish for them this core, this strength, this clarity, so that they can meet whatever situation they're in. And I actually saw this person recently on Zoom, and absolutely, this person is clear, and this person is meeting the situation they're in. And the other thing that we're doing is when we are chanting Kwansen Boso, we are becoming Kwansen Boso. That mind that is just reaching out 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands. So each hand is an eye, and that eye sees the suffering of the world, and Kwanseum means perceived world sound. So Kwansen Boso perceives the sounds of suffering, and then the hands are there to help. So we become Kwansen Boso when we're chanting Kwansen Boso. And then Jijang Boso, well, what are you doing when you're chanting for people who died? For some people, they're chanting for a better rebirth. And I'm not going to say, don't do that. If you believe in rebirth, then chant for that. Me, I'm kind of not so sure. Although, what does rebirth mean? That's a whole 20-minute Dharma talk. I'm not going to go there. But when you're chanting Jijang Bosal, and there's something very similar in Judaism when you chant Kaddish for 11 months after someone's died. When you're chanting Jijang Bosal for someone you're close to, then what happens is you see the stages of your grief. It's a time in your day, and whenever someone I've been close to has died, including my parents, who would not have appreciated it, I always chant Jijang Bosal for them. And it's every day there's a place for your grief to appear. There's nothing else happening. And you see how your grief changes. You see over time that your relationship to this situation of this person who is now dead, and you see how this changes. And that's enormously helpful. As you can go on and then use your own suffering to help. Because our own suffering, what can we do? We can transmute it to help others. And so Jijang Bosal chanting does that for people. It allows us, on the one hand, we're wishing something for whatever entity is left when people die. And on the other hand, it's a sort of marker for ourselves as we move through grief. And it's also, when we do it in community, both Kwanzaa Bosal and Jijang Bosal, it's a matter of community concern. And when we're chanting Jijang Bosal for the loved one of someone else, and that person knows, oh, my community, my Sangha, they care. I'm part of this Sangha. They're supporting me. So that's also very important. And the same thing when we're chanting Kwanzaa Bosal, I list these names, and most of us don't know most of those names. In fact, I think there's no one who knows all of those names. But whoever asks us to chant for that person, they're aware in that moment that we're standing by them, that they're part of our Sangha, and that our Sangha cares about them. So, that's enough. Thank you.